Hey there, guys. So I've given you enough time to go ahead and work on the questions. Now I'm going to be going over the questions. Take note of what I say, do what I do, and see if you were able to get the same answers. And if you weren't, let's see where your differences were from my answers. So, question number one: humans are able to manipulate land in order to do many things. Explain what farming does to the original plants that should have existed in an ecosystem. Does farming continue or stop succession? So, we had a plot of land. It originally had these plants, it had these trees, it had all these little ecosystem that was there. So when we farm, we rip all the plants out of there and we grind up the earth so that we make it into soft soil for our plants. So what happened to the original plants in the ecosystem? We removed them. They're gone. They don't exist there anymore. Does farming continue or stop succession? Farming stops succession actually because of the fact that the original plants that were there can no longer grow there. We've completely removed them, and we do a pretty good job of removing them to make sure they don't come back. So we've stopped succession. We've removed the original plants. Now the only thing that exists there are vegetables, and the only way those original plants will come back is if we stop plowing the land, we stop getting rid of the plants, and we let them all naturally come back in. Let's go to question two now. So here's a food web, very pretty food web. Question says, which of the following would have the smallest effect on the ecosystem if removed by an invasive species? So we're looking for the one that's going to have the smallest effect. So we have zooplankton, phytoplankton, the bald eagle, and the tundra swan. Let's come back up here. So I remember that I told you guys, the lower on the trophic level that you attack, the worse things get. So our lowest trophic level, our producers in these situations are going to be down here. Our vegetation, our submerged aquatic vegetation, our phytoplankton, and to a certain extent, our zooplankton. So what we have right here are level, which are going to be our producers. And we say that zooplankton are also producers, even though it says herbivores right here. We put them under producers because of the fact that they're not eating anything else. And they just didn't fit at the bottom anymore. So we have two producers here, zooplankton and phytoplankton. We're looking for the one that's going to have the smallest effect. Since these are at the producer level, those are out automatically. They are going to make a huge effect. They're going to completely throw off the ecosystem. Now let's go up. All right, so we come up here to the tundra swan. Okay, so tundra swan eats the vegetation right here, so that would make them a primary consumer. And then tundra also eats this thing right here called the bivalves, and the bivalves eat the phytoplankton. So that in that case, the tundra would be a secondary consumer, but secondary, primary, it's still not that high up. I don't think it'll affect us too badly. All right, let's go to the next one. Bald eagle. Okay, so let's follow the line back. And when we follow the line back, we can come here to phytoplankton up until the invertebrates. So the invertebrates are primary consumer. The sea duck is going to be a secondary consumer. This makes the bald eagle a tertiary consumer. There's also another way to get here. So if we follow this line, the zooplankton to the small fish to the large fish. So small fish is primary, large fish is secondary. That makes the bald eagle tertiary. So removing the bald eagle will have the smallest effect because it is at the highest level. Removing something at the lowest level has the biggest effect. Removing something at the highest level has the smallest effect. So removing the bald eagle would have the smallest effect. Our answer for this one would have been C in this case. Now, question three. Invasive species do not disrupt the ecosystem as much as natural disasters. The answer for this is false. As a matter of fact, they disrupt the ecosystem even more because, as I said earlier, natural disasters are temporary. Invasive species are a long-term problem. If I was to introduce an invasive species to an ecosystem, that's probably one of the worst things that I could do for that ecosystem. I really must hate that ecosystem. I must want it to fail if I'm going to be introducing a invasive species. It'd be better off if I just sent a fire, if I lit a fire to the forest rather than introduce an invasive species into it. That's how bad invasive species are. Let's go to question four. So we have the chart right here, and this is frog population over the course of years. So in a pond, there is a population of frogs. A makeup company needed to dispose of its chemicals and decided to pour them into the pond. They did this during the year of 2016. Then, 4 years later, an invasive species of crabs entered the pond. The chart tracks the population of the frogs throughout time. Based on the data in the chart, which event had the biggest effect on the frog species? Defend your answer with data on the chart. All right, so let's start it off. We start out here at 2011, and we are right here at around 100. We're going up, we go down, we go up. We drop down, we drop down. 2016 comes around, and we had a dip. We had a pretty big dip in 2016. We dropped down to around 80, but 2017 we rise up a little bit more. 2018 we rise up a little bit more. 2019 we're doing pretty good, and 2020 we dropped down to about 70. 2021 is around 60, and then 2022 we're around 30. 2023 we're around 10. By 2024 we're done. There's no more. So let's check out the important key points right here. For 2016, this one right here is a pretty low point when the makeup got added. But then we see that the population kind of just came back up. So it was only a dip in the population for a bit. It was a temporary problem. 2020, we see a pretty drastic dip, the lowest dip we've seen. And then we see a continuous drop over the years, continuously going down and down and down. And 2020 happens to be 4 years after 2016, which is also when the invasive species of crabs were added. So if I had to make a prediction based on the data in the chart, which event had the biggest effect on the frog species, I would say it'd be the introduction of the invasive crab species. Because when we introduced the makeup chemicals into the pond, there was a dip for that year, but we can recover. We recovered from that. When we introduced invasive species, there was a dip, and it continued going down until boom, they're completely gone. So the biggest effect on the frog species was the introduction of the invasive crab, because they ended up leading to the death and the extinction of that population of frogs in the pond. Let's go to the last one. Trees are able to recycle nutrients back into the earth by either shedding leaves or dying. As trees get bigger, it ends up taking more nutrients in than the amount that it returns to the earth by shedding leaves. This becomes an issue because trees eventually end up draining the soil of nutrients if they don't die. In California, a natural way of trees dying is by catching fire, because most of California is a fire-adapted ecosystem. Humans have been stopping these fires because of the potential damage that could occur to people's homes. Because of this, many trees have overgrown. Predict what's happening to the soil in California, and predict what's happening to the species of organisms that feed on the annual plants that used to grow every year. So we know that, yes, trees do recycle nutrients, but it's the ratio of nutrients. As they get bigger, yes, they're shedding leaves, but that's not enough to make up for the fact of how many nutrients they're taking in. So it's an unbalanced ratio. They're taking in more than they're giving back. But we used to have a solution to this. Whenever the trees would burn, they would return nutrients back to the earth. But now they're not burning. So since they're not burning, they're getting bigger and bigger, and the ratio is getting bigger and bigger. They're taking more and more every year than what they're returning back. It's an unfair system. It's unbalanced. And so what my prediction would be is the soil in California is losing all the nutrients because all the big trees are keeping those nutrients. They're keeping more nutrients in them than what they're returning back. And so over time, the amount of nutrients is going to go down and down and down until eventually the soil is just not going to be able to maintain any more life. Now, the second part is predict what's happening to the species of organisms that fed on the annual plants. Okay, so we require the big trees to die so annual plants can grow, but they're not dying anymore because the fires aren't there. So we're getting less and less annual plants every single year. And if you're a species that feeds on those annual plants, you're getting less food. And if you have less food, your species population goes down too. So my prediction is that all the species that feed on the annual plants are decreasing every year because we get less and less annual plants every single year. But anyway, guys, that's it for me. Hopefully you guys were able to get this too. If you didn't, please go ahead and listen to this video again. See if you can, if you run into anything where you're like, okay, this makes more sense, or if you need more help. And other than that, we're done with this. I'm going to go ahead and link the code to the exit ticket at the end of this. So you'll have access to the exit ticket at the end of this. And other than that, look forward to the material where you can recover some points and use a study guide that I'm going to give you. It should be posted into your Google Classroom. But anyway, guys, I will see you guys later. Bye.